Hi everyone, welcome back onto Teacups in Orbit. It's Aaliyah, and today we are going to talk about the architect of erasure and the American dream. As a first-generation American myself and the child of immigrant parents, this is a topic that is super important to me and many other children of immigrants who I've also spoken with. Before I delve into this topic, I want to acknowledge that my situation doesn't quite fit into this mold because my upbringing has been very different. I do, however, see the challenges with assimilation, trying to live up to the American dream as someone this dream wasn't meant to benefit. For context, I am a first-generation American, however, my upbringing feels very second-generation. I do understand that this is not the norm in immigrant households, but my unique position has shown me that the American dream is not a goal to be reached, but rather an architect that often demands the erasure of one's origin as the price of admission. So, what even is the American dream? Usually described as freedom, success, stability, and even the idea that if you work hard enough, you can build a better life. On the surface, it really is the American dream. But the reality is far more complicated because that dream never looks the same for everyone. For a lot of people, especially immigrants, children of immigrants, and people from marginalized cultures, success often arrives with the pressure to conform to American standards. There's this silent message that being accepted means changing the way you speak, hiding accents, letting people mispronounce your name because correcting them feels too exhausting. And it can also mean not bringing cultural food to school because you don't want stares, jokes, or comments. Or learning to fit in to avoid being treated like an outsider. This erasure isn't contained by borders. The American dream is our most successful export, and it carries the virus of Western hegemony. On the global south, we see westernization rebranded as modernization, and around the world, Western culture is often treated like the standard. In most countries, English is seen as more valuable, more intelligent, or even more professional than local dialects. For example, in India, studies have shown that workers who speak fluent English can earn up to 34% more per hour than those who do not, regardless of their skill level. This creates a systemic incentive to prioritize Western education over local traditions. People begin to act more Western because Western culture is associated with power, success, and modernity. This sends the message that your own language, traditions, and identities matter less. What if the American dream only works if you erase all parts of yourself first? People talk about the American dream like it's universal. Anyone can reach it through hard work alone, but for many people, there's an unspoken rule. Fit in first. Sound more American, look more American, act more American, but little by little, one's culture starts feeling like something to hide instead of something you get to keep. This preference for Western standard isn't an accident of history, it's the lingering shadow of colonialism. For centuries, colonial powers didn't just occupy the land, they occupied the mind. They established a hierarchy where civilized world was defined by European language, Christian values, capitalist structures. Everything else, like indigenous knowledge, communal living, oral traditions, were labeled as primitive. When we talk about the modernization in the global south today, we are often looking at neocolonialism in a suit and tie. We see it in the way international business is conducted and the way global beauty standards lean more towards Eurocentric features. In many post colonial nations, the architect of erasure is the curriculum itself that often prioritizes Western history over the soil the students stand on. We are taught that to move forward, we must look west. To stay local is to stay behind. This creates a psychological fracture and a double consciousness, where you are forced to see yourself through the eyes of the person who colonized you. This is where cultural erasure begins, through the repetition of this never ending cycle. Through people's small choices, people feel pushed to make it in order to belong. Over time, these choices can become internalized shame. Once you start to wonder if your culture is something beautiful or something embarrassing. You are too foreign for the suburbs of Ohio, yet too American for the streets of your parents' birth. The American dreams demands that you sever your roots to grow, but without roots, you remain in a state of permanent suspension. Even the media reflects this problem. Real representation matters, but for a long time, many people have grown up seeing few figures who actually looked like them, spoke like them, or shared their culture in a real way. Sometimes the only option was to connect to someone who was not really your ethnicity at all, but they felt close enough because there were so little options. And when representation did exist, it was often reduced to comical stereotypes instead of showing the depth and complexity of actual cultures. We must ask the uncomfortable question: who was this dream designed for? If we look at the blueprints of the American dream, we see it was never a blind meritocracy. Systemic issues like the redlining and the 1924 Immigration Act were literal tools used to decide who was assimilable enough and who was not. For decades, the ideal American was legally and socially defined by its proximity to whiteness. This data shows up in our daily lives. Consider resume bias, a 2021 study from UC Berkeley and the University of Chicago that found job applications with distinctively Black or foreign sounding names receive significantly fewer callbacks than identical resumes with white sounding names. Even for those who make it through the filter, the toll is still high. Code switching isn't just a linguistic quirk, it's a survival strategy, and especially in the workplace. According to Pew Research, nearly 40% of Black and Hispanic professionals feel the need to alter their speech or appearance to succeed in the workplace. We call it professionalism, but in reality, it's a tax on the soul. It is the energy spent making sure your existence does not unsettle the status quo. If the ideal American is built on the foundation of whiteness, then the dream is not a ladder, it is a filter. It is designed to strain out the excess, the language, the communal values, the otherness, until only a palatable, productive unit remains. Can the American dream exist without erasure? If we define the dream as the pursuit of a singular Western ideal, the answer is no. Erasure is the feature, not the bug, and to move forward, we have to dismantle the melting pot, a metaphor for destruction, and replace it with the framework that views cultural preservation as a right and not a hindrance. In conclusion, the cost of the dream shouldn't be the erasure of the people dreaming it. This does not mean that we reject the journey of joining a new society. Rather, it means true belonging requires us to retain our cultural roots while embracing the new. We must stop viewing the American dream as a melting pot that dissolves us and start seeing it as a lens that magnifies our collective richness. Only then can we build a nation that is truly great, not through what we leave behind, but through everything we bring with us. Thank you all so much for joining me on this episode of Teacups in Orbit. I'm Aaliyah, and you are watching me spilling tea in zero gravity. Our next episode will come out soon, and please drop what you think about what I was talking about in the comments down below. I love to hear your opinions, and it is so important to me that you all do share your opinions with me. So, like, subscribe, drop a comment down below, and tune in for the next video, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching.